All right. Good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and bring the July 2021 council workshop to order. Call to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Johnson,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Evans,
Here.
Councilmember Carter,
Here.
Councilmember Dole,
Here.
Member Ishmael, here, Councilmember McClymons,
Present.
Councilmember Swatman,
Present.
and Councilmember Watson.
Here.
Terrific. Good evening, everyone. Tonight's agenda. First, we have a presentation from the food bank, and I think Stacy, is she in the house?
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. This in-person thing is tripping me out.
Feel more comfortable, you just put it down.
That feels like real celebrity style, doesn't it?
I'm
It's a little much, right? Is it a little much? It feels like a little
You gotta move around.
much. I moved my hands. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here on this first meeting back. I appreciate it. Bringing me to the top of the agenda. First of all, I wanted to thank everyone for that $40,000 gift last year in the height of the pandemic. When that money came through, we were positioning ourselves for the highest spike in those that we served. We had topped out over 1,200 families weekly, up from 150. And we wanted to make sure that we could provide holiday meals, not just Thanksgiving, but Christmas to all of those families. At that time, which seems like a lifetime ago, I speak about COVID months as COVID years. So 8 COVID months ago, we were serving to over 150 households in this area. And I was concerned, deeply concerned, that we wouldn't be able to afford to get them both Thanksgiving and Christmas meals. And I wanted desperately to do that. So with the combination of the food drive that the mayor ran for us, in addition to the money, we were able to put that directly towards food. So I wanted you to know that, that didn't pay for anything fancy, went right to holiday meals. So thank you for that. So fresh off the press here, our new vision statement as a combined organization as we move forward. I wanted to give you an update tonight on where we're at with that merge, and then also let you know a little bit about what I see for the future for the food bank, with both locations and as a merged entity serving with one mission in this one community. So I also wanted to introduce who I have with me tonight too, just so that you know who's here. I have Brianne Holcomb, who is our director of our Sumner Food Bank. I have John Rader, who is the president of the Sumner Food Bank. I've got 2 of everything, so we've kind of, and I love them all. And then I have Brian and Grace, board members on the Bonney Lake side. I have a hard time talking about them. It's like 2 families, but they're all my children. So. So they're here tonight. So our new vision, we're going to keep it just real clean and simple about this is who we are. We are striving for a hunger-free community. Visions are altruistic statements, and we're going to be bold. What am I doing?
You just scroll.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know me or have only seen, this much of me or seen me on the screen, I'm a resident of Bonney Lake. I've been here for over 20 years, married to my husband for 20 years as well. He bought me the house on Angeline for Valentine's. I have a son that's at UW Med School, his second year now, and a daughter that's in the 6th grade. My background is as a corporate buyer, financial manager, and inventory strategist for Nordstrom Inc. Little did I know some of those skills would prepare me to a food bank CEO, an accidental one, in fact, but it did, especially during the COVID environment. I started my current role 10 days before the pandemic. For those of you that don't remember that first desperate meeting that we had, we sit in a much different place as an organization today, proudly so, but still very much in the thick of it. And forget what I can. Our mission this is also new as a combined team. Interestingly enough, we have not landed on our name, which seems like a very simple thing for when two organizations come together, that we would come up with the name. And that seems like the easy part. We haven't landed there yet. But what I thought would be the really hard part was that mission, values, and those kind of more robust statements. Really easy. We slammed this out in about an hour, which shows you that we're quite aligned in how we feel. Our mission is to provide equitable access to nutritious food with dignity to those in the community facing food insecurity. This is food insecurity during the height of the pandemic. Going into the pandemic, it was 1 in 5 children in our community were experiencing long-term or situational food insecurity. The height of the pandemic, 1 in 3. And so in an environment where we couldn't agree on much, in 2020, the one thing we could agree on very much was that we didn't like that number. And so with the help of this incredible community, we were able to do something. Our values are very simple. I love these words. My signature signs off with this: dignity, equity, and access and community. Dignity, we want to cultivate a culture that ensures everyone is valued and respected. We want to be equitable in addressing systemic practices while removing barriers to food access. And community, because we believe that hunger is a community problem that requires community solutions. So creating a network of collaborative partners unified in building the outcome-focused solutions, transparency, and accountability. So you're a little bit more of our network, collaborative partners. Dignity for all. When I talk about dignity a lot, I like to talk about what it sounds, feels like, what it looks like. It's customer-centered practices, comfortable, beautiful spaces, less rules, more grace. That's kind of my mantra. Delivery in unmarked vans that look more like Uber Eats. We deliver to anyone from a car that does not have gas on the side of a road in Wilkinson to Taps Island, unmarked vans. And that was critical in addressing hunger in our community. That unmarked van, having it look like Uber Eats, then a lot more people were comfortable. Grocery bags versus boxes, multilingual communication. We currently text in 6 different languages, focused on convenience. I like to say that convenience is often only afforded to those that can afford it, and shouldn't it really be the opposite? We're focused on creating a diverse staff where people can see themselves in our buildings and on our shelves. No paperwork, no institutional processes, text broadcasting, also critical. No appointments, no list, easy sign up online, and saying customer, not client. I also believe in the power of language. Obviously, there's a lot of things with how things sound and look. And over the course of the pandemic, we celebrated food and bounty. Ironically, there was a lot more food in the system that was more nutritious. It was just a matter of getting it from A to B. And that transportation and the multilingual communication is how we found A to B happened. So we celebrated the bounty and delivered ironically better food than probably most of our customers have ever seen. And a lot of what I'm doing today is to secure that long term. I don't really want that to go away. We learned a lot in the pandemic. Our programs right now, we often think about that the market is our brand, and it is the name of our organization. The market is really a program. It's a proof of concept that food banks don't need to look like food banks. Food banks can look like grocery stores. That people can come in to the food bank with their children, which, by the way, almost every one of our customers brings their children now. We bought carts to make sure that their children could fit in it. Yesterday, I do declare the cutest baby in all of Bonney Lake came shopping at the market. I got to tell her so. So that has been one of the most beautiful things to witness. There is stripping the shame out of that and bringing the family and celebrating, who they are and where they're at right now, despite it being a very hard time for very many people. We also have food for kids, basically needed, which Elizabeth Carter, Gary's wife, runs for us. The diaper bank and personal care. SNAP benefits do not cover many of these basic needs. So families, I like to tell what this looks like because I don't think a lot of people realize what this looks like. You go to Walmart the next time, you will notice that in the diaper section, if you were to turn one of the bags in the diaper section, there is probably a cut in the back where a desperate mother has ripped a diaper and just slid one out of that package. She doesn't feel right stealing, but she needs just one because her baby's. That is happening all over. A pack of diapers, I haven't bought them in 11 years, but it's about $33 for the big pack. That is not something that families right now do. So Elizabeth was able to work with Help Me Grow in Pierce County, one of our beautiful partners, and make sure that that doesn't happen in our community. Also, Farm to Fork, which I'll tell you more about, is kind of an exciting thing that we want to do out at the farm that will create some long-term sustainability. Little trigger happy here. I also wanted to show you just like in current state, and you had this before, so I'm not going to like sit here and read this to you, but I wanted you to know like how we're operating right now. Because we have 25 people that are very invested in this right now, and we're coming together and working equally matched kind of for the same outcome, which is why the vision and the mission and the goals, we wanted to get that solidified. We're all marching to this beat. It's been an incredible process to be part of, and ultimately having the ability to serve our customers in 2 locations, serve an entire community, which we've been doing since the beginning of the pandemic. This just makes it that much easier and more sustainable for us. We have 2 market directors now, 2 customer service staff, a food steward. We now have a warehouse and inventory team, and we were able to secure a lease to a facility down in Sumner that we're storing our food now centrally. So we've created a food hub. We have operations and logistics and admin. A little bit different than it was just me and the girls, but they're still around. So we also have committees within there. I explained the programs. Our service models right now, we went from 95% delivery to 95% in person. We still have a curbside option for those that aren't comfortable coming into our building yet. And we offer delivery. The Bonney Lake Senior Center has turned over their delivery to us. So we do that every Monday. We have the most lovely woman and her developmentally disabled son, adult son, and they go out and deliver to our local seniors. Food procurement is still very much dependent upon the Emergency Food Network, Food Lifeline for our grocery rescue. Purchasing has gone to an absolute minimum. We've been able to leverage partnerships and be very strategic with our funding. Food is plentiful. That's a great place to be in. We still have incredible community drives and donations, and local farms are donating to us. In terms of technology, our cloud-based phone line and online registration and text broadcasting, everything's in the cloud right now. So we have the ability to sort of slice and dice information for events. We're able to target if there was an event for a family with children in the school district that we might want to touch base with them and let them know about the back to school event, and also a technology event. If they need something, we can text them in multiple languages in 30 seconds and disseminate like which of our customers have children of a school age in the district limit. So geographically, we're able to target exactly who we want to talk with and how. iPads we found to be quite universal. So iPads are, in the olden days, I'll just tell you that when you walk up to a food bank, it used to be that you'd have to sign your name with your family there, your children, and everybody in the building got to watch you do it. You gave really personal information about yourself, and you had to sign your name. None of that is required. When we say less rules, more grace, I absolutely mean that. I'm not legally required to do that. A lot of practices like that are just in place because it makes people feel better. So that no longer exists. Volunteers, we have 100 plus volunteer shifts each week. We have 200 volunteers in each location, so that life is good. We have a lot of support. I think you guys have seen this, but it's kind of phenomenal. I still look at it and think, did that happen? We had a 700% increase over the course of the pandemic. This was indicative of our ability to very, very quickly activate an emergency response program. We were in an emergency response mode, as you guys know, because I called you and said, I have an emergency, guys. And so from about the third week of the pandemic on, we were in a delivery model. Since then, the National Guard has left, that funding is left. That was about $700,000 of labor, vehicles, gas, all of that. I still have my fleet of vehicles, but I do not have that infrastructure that the Guard was able to provide. Our COVID financial impact, this is the kind of portfolio where if you were in any other business other than a food bank business, this would be great, but it's not. So our general operating went up to 600,000, 175,000 in food purchases. You guys help me get to that number. Vehicles, payroll, the trend there. The really great part about it, the Bonney Lake Food Bank going into 2020, we had 50,000 in the bank account, and we were going to close our doors, as you know, by the D-Day. Obviously, some things changed, and we were able to clear, because of grants and funding, 1.4 million, of which 85% of it went directly into. So, your business. Our distribution grew. Monthly household visits, 4,800. Individuals served, 18,000 a month. 500,000 pounds of food. A lot of people look at that and say, that's not possible that 4 gals did that. We did. It was 500,000 pounds. Growth factors, what I attribute all of this to, because it's crazy when you say 700%, so I feel like I kind of got to back it up sometimes. We had a coordinator on call. It's that gal right behind me there. 7 days a week, multilingual, self-service, all the things I told you before. There's our building, you guys. She had her best 8 months, I feel like. I think I messaged and said she kind of had her best 8 months with us, and then we said goodbye. So December 1st is when we moved to the food bank. I really like, because nonprofit, a lot of times people don't talk about how nonprofits work. That whole money thing happens. So I just want to really quickly tell you that when we launched a capital campaign, we had no business launching a capital campaign in the fourth quarter of an election year, the pending recession, and a global pandemic. No business. When we did it, we actually had 2 campaigns going side by side. And I just want to tell you this because this is about what your community did. Rise to the occasion. We put on our website, here is the capital campaign. If you believe in changing the narrative of food security in your area, you can vote with your dollar here. We're moving. We need help to retrofit this building. If you feel good about this, vote with your dollar here. You want to continue to feed your neighbors? We do too. And that's our priority, vote here. In that time, the community rose. 125,000 was given to us. We were able to immediately retrofit that building on the interior. We focused on that first. And then $365,000 was donated in that same time period, in that same month, to continue to feed people. It was incredible. So in-kind donations then, continue to move that. So a project that we walked into that was fairly dilapidated with 125,000. By the way, I kicked in 50 that we had in savings, so we wanted to make sure that we had skin in the game. When we walked into there, we had no idea that in 6 months it would be at this point worth 750 community money. When I talk about that building, that's not my building, that's not that organization's building, that's the community building, and how we'll use that will continue to benefit the community. When I talk to them, I think that can be. Future plans on the property would be community garden, a food forest, teaching and sensory, a complete food and family sort of engagement. I want it to be an immersive experience. Hydroponic greenhouses, lease space to small farmers, and STEM and agricultural engagement programs. Those things are all what I'm talking to the Intertribal Council currently, as well as the USDA and WSDA Feeding America. So those goals that I thought were quite futuristic are within striking distance. So before, it's pretty cute. We like it a lot now. Our customers, when they walk into that space, often don't believe it's for them. Dignity, when you give it to people when they least expect it, is probably one of the most beautiful things that I've ever had the honor. So as a merged organization, here we are together serving. I wanted to give you an idea of households currently, what our lineup is, so that you know what's going on. I have people in Auburn that have no way to speak to a food bank in their language. They come to us. I have people in Puyallup that were refused food bank. They come to us. I have people on Lake Tax that don't want their neighbors to know that they have to go to a food bank. Come to us. And I have people in Buckley that can see the Buckley Food Bank from where we deliver to, and they come to us. Not because we have better food. First 100 days, we've been a little bit busy. If you tried to get a hold of me, I'm super, super sorry. We're working really hard, but I got a great team. Combined leader, I was immediately put in the position. Had the honor to do that for both communities, and they have entrusted me with a 30-year organization in place, giving me their vote of confidence greatly. We were able to immediately, within the third day, get $100,000 for both sites awarded from the WSDA for capacity grants. What I'm doing right now is what I did at the beginning of the pandemic. I am wanting to make sure that our capacity is ready to go for whatever the next 6 months brings. And I don't know, maybe it'll be great. I want to make sure we're ready. We purchased critical safety equipment at both sites, pallet jacks, anything we would need for the new warehouse to get us positioned. All new refrigeration, food safe. Food banks kind of have the same menu. We all have very limited infrastructure that we are doing a heck of a lot with right now. So I tried to immediately improve that in Sumner so that we could have the same experience as safety and hygiene right away. We have put everything in the cloud, communication, our volunteer management, our donor management. I am able to go into Costco, who not only gave us a grant, whose employees work for us, who gives us donated food, and quantify from my phone, thank you for all this. And I can see exactly what that is that I'm thanking them for. So whether that's Teeter, Corliss, whoever I'm talking to in the cloud, I can thank them very specifically for what they've offered. When we talk about in-kind nonprofits, by the way, in-kind we've received, when I say $525,000 of in-kind, that means that the Allred brothers rushed to get me air conditioning, and they're out there tomorrow doing that. That's a $50,000 job that they did for nothing. Boone Electric, same thing. $100,000 of commercial equipment, because when we moved to the farm, everything busted on the same day, from the sewer to the refrigeration. Elizabeth is with there. She bared witness to the farm screaming at us, but we've got her under control now. We've cleaned and demoed Sumner. We are going to be using that building a little bit differently. I will tell you more about that We've reconfigured it. The renovation is in full swing and will probably be done in a month. We opened up both markets in this time, said goodbye to the guard, hired human resource consultant, done a lot that we're feeling really good about going into the fall. The current economic recovery partnerships, this is something that at the beginning of the pandemic, I knew we were in a crisis response model. Right now, we're in a different kind of crisis where we want to play a part with all of this infrastructure and everything that we've been given. I am reflecting and looking at our organization and what we have and trying to figure out how can I continue to use what we have to work for the community in new ways. It might not be in the in the back of a delivery van right now with National Guard at the wheel, but that van might be able to be used by a first generation farmer who would otherwise need to rent that and can't afford it. So things that have been given to us and entrusted to us, I want to make sure that we didn't just get that at the beginning of the pandemic and now it just sits. It needs to continue to work. So right now we're working with the South Puget Sound Intertribal Planning Agency, the Sumner Bonney Lake School District and Family Center have been phenomenal partners. The Northwest Behavioral Association. We work right now with a lot of people in our community that have neurodiversity, where if you're 75 years old and you have a 40-year-old adult with a neurodiverse brain that is beautiful, you might not have a place where you can drop off that adult and know that they're safe. Food Bank is one place you can do that. We have job skills training that are happening, social skills, and a bunch of women that want to mother the community and all the people of the community. So right now we're working with a lot of adults that wouldn't have another place really right now. The Tacoma Pierce County Health Department we're working with, the WSDA, the Tacoma Farmers Market is out there weekly. We're working with Evo and WorkSource. I lost an R there, you guys. Ongoing partners, or partners. The Sumner Bonney Lake Community-Based Transition Program, the interns that come out, they are phenomenal. Starbucks did a study actually with neurodiverse adults that did packaging for them. Their quality assurance was 100%. So on the spectrum are phenomenal workers. They do beautiful work. So we are happy to have that internship program, and they do beautiful work for us. Building Beyond the Walls is right there on the campus farm. We are working with the Prairie Ridge Community Coalition, Kiwanis and Lions youth programs. That's been incredible to watch. The Bonney Lake High School Culinary Arts, and Mom's Microgreens. That's Patrick Brown, the farmer, our resident farmer. Everybody knows Marilee Hill Anderson, little cutie tooties. Angela Ishmael has adopted a couple of our pantries and is a steward and goes out and tends to them, shops, and makes sure that they have everything they need. I wanted to give you a little bit of a snapshot because while we're kind of out of the storm, there's still, there's still some things happening in 2021. This is our 6-month snapshot on expenses. We, currently in 2020, our payroll is at 57. We're up there right now. Our utilities to fire up all this equipment. We're working with PSE tomorrow actually on a solar to get solar panels for both our food banks. Leaseholds has gone up. We have to have a place to keep all this food, and our technology. Every time we send out a text in 6 different languages, that's $400. Do that really wisely, but we definitely have grant money to make sure that we can do that. Our funding is also a little bit different. Grants right now, I can get a grant for 25 forklifts if I wanted them, but I can't get a grant to keep the lights on. Interestingly enough, farmers in our area, I've been talking a lot with them, have a completely opposite problem. They can get grants, keep the lights on and keep their employees in there, but they cannot get a grant for a forklift or anything they need to save their life. So I'm exploring that sort of yet again as the Guard and the food banks came in this unlikely marriage. There are things that we learned about local farmers and cutting out the middlemen during the pandemic where we had those farm to family opportunities where I remember the 3rd month of the pandemic when the Tacoma Farmers Market rolled up and it looked like the Garden of Eden in the back of their truck, and I thought, why hasn't this always been? There's overages in our community that need to be purchased. Why aren't we doing this? So that's the future of the farm, and we'll continue to develop that, and I'll continue to keep you posted on what that looks like. In terms of the future with the city of Bonney Lake, we feel that we would love to partner, and we are currently with Sumner, to communicate with the heavily impacted population, help be a trusted partner. Sometimes messaging from us, whether it's in our food banks, like we will have right now the newsletter for the city of Sumner, different flyers that they want, having it in the food bank where we can present it to them as sort of a trusted partner seems to, we're finding a lot of impact there. We've created these information stations, resource pop-ups. We have a united focus. I think all of us want to see this economy more than anything. We have a job fair at the farm on Friday, so we are connected to the Spanish-speaking population, and we would love to collaborate on messaging, social media. We have positive and inspiring storytelling with regard to our partnerships and the success rate there. Relationship building with community partners, and meeting space and team building events. I also wanted to let you know that we have been selected for the District 1 Inter-District Annual Meeting with Dave Morrell. I would like to invite each of you to that. If you'd like to attend, please email me. I think you guys have my email. If that's something that you'd like. We will have presentations there about the farm, a little bite to eat. It should be pretty fun, actually. You'll hear a couple of these things, but maybe some new stuff here. And so I wanted to thank you and talk with you about partnership going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Stacy, very much. Very, very busy. I tell you, it's incredible work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from council to Stacy at all? No?
A question, I would just want to say thank you for all of your work on that. I remember when this first started and what things look like. What things look like now is a more than 180-degree turn. It's absolutely amazing. So you've done a fantastic.
Yeah, really good.
Sign it back on. Thank you, Terry.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, yeah, I agree. The before and after pictures were fantastic, but it doesn't do it justice. It's unbelievable the way that you talk about things and actually how it went down is very identical. You and I walked the food bank and said, hey, this is where people come in and check in and they have to sign this paper. We want to do away with that. Within a couple of days, it was gone. That check-in station was no longer there. The limiting or the lack of just willingly giving food was a problem. And the next week, it was just take what you need, take what you want. There's plenty of food. So nicely done, breezy, wonderful. Congratulations, you guys. It's awesome to see you guys succeed this way.
Tremendous. Great. Thank you very much. All right, moving on. We have council open discussion. Councilmember Watson?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, first I want to say it's really good to see everybody back and are online still, but also getting together and communicate one off back up. And also, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for getting the concerts going so quickly. The community has really come out to see them last 2 weeks. And the Lions Club has done very well. Our beer garden, we sold out last week, and that money goes back into the community that needs it, that can't afford things, that can't get glasses, can't get clothing. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for doing that going forward. I appreciate all your work.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other open discussion?
Just real quick, I know we had some tagging within the city this last week or last 10 days. I was very impressed with the staff. I don't know if it's Ryan we need to thank. I did talk to Todd today and thanked him, but that was taken care of quick and it was done nicely. So nice job to the group. I know it's unfortunate that we have those tagging issues throughout the city, but we really appreciate your response to taking care of those.
Terrific. Thank you, Councilmember Dole. Appreciate that. Any other open discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to bring up something.
Go ahead. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Earlier today, I sent out a proclamation for review. I'd like to have considered council meeting. The proclamation is recognizing July 2021 as a Pride Month in the city of Bonney Lake and celebrating LGBTQ plus members of our community and their families. The council got it and some of the staff got it as well, but it came through Pablo, one of our chairs of our Parks Commission. I want to thank him for bringing this up to us. That I think this is something that we do need to not only adopt but also celebrate. Members of the LGBTQ plus community have been deep rooted in Bonney Lake for quite a long time and done so without any celebration. And now is the time, I think, to bring this forward and say we respect you, we accept you, we are an inclusive city. We passed a resolution a few weeks ago that said that. I think now is the time to put the rubber to the pavement and confirm that with them. And so I'd like to move this forward as a proclamation for next week. But this came through unusual means. Normally it comes through the administration. This time it came through the website. So I'm not sure exactly how we normally would do something along these lines. So I wanted to bring it up in open discussion and see what the process is for moving that forward.
Any discussion from council?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to acknowledge that this proclamation was submitted to the mayor's office by Mr. Monroe over 2 weeks ago, and after it was revised by the legal team of the city, as Deputy Mayor Evans said, he only released it to us 4 hours ago. So, being that this topic is very sensitive in nature, I believe that I have not been given sufficient time or to research the position and also to gather public comment. And so I can't in good conscience discuss it at this time.
So as a point of reference, just from the mayor's office, so routinely for the last 15 years, the proclamations have been very generic, and they're usually about jobs, our students, and I've never come to council on those proclamations. They just come in. It's what we've always done. This one here came in through this recommend and asking to be a proclamation. Went through the process, which we've never really done before, and it's only done when you have proclamations that are coming out from other folks that we don't recognize. And I think it's just a matter of the council being engaged and reviewing, what we want to put on a proclamation, because to me, it's not me putting a proclamation together. This reflects the city. And this came in on July. It may have come in on July 8th, but I was out of the office until July 13th. And when it did come in, we could not access the information of the proclamation. So Leslie was able to get that extracted, I think, just a few days ago. And I sent it forward then to Justin today or yesterday and got it to him. So it happened quickly. We had no meetings anyway. This could have been reviewed. And Pablo, I believe, wanted to reflect July. Sometimes you can't get it done that quick, and I understand that proclamation's got to be reviewed. And however, that's just kind of the framework of as far as the proclamations and how they're presented in the past and how we got here. So that's it.
I know some people have brought up the point where typically Pride Month is June. Pierce County and Tacoma have been celebrating it for over 20 years. But we just watched a presentation. There were some words that I wrote down: dignity, equity, access, community, and the power of language. All things that I think we, not only as the food bank encompass, but we as a city encompass or should encompass. All this is 7 sentences, 164 words, saying that be proud of who you are, celebrate who you are, celebrate who you love who you are. It's a really simple thing to review. We reviewed a 3-page document on our last resolution, and we passed that the following week, having gone through legal 3 times. So I think we're pretty efficient and effective council. I don't see any reason why moving this forward, and there isn't the language to change like there was in the last resolution, we can't get that done. It's really important to recognize this in July, being that it is Pride Month here in Pierce County. So really like to fight for that. There's nothing political about this. It's recognition of a community of people that have gone underserved in our community or underrecognized for quite some time. We do this for some other great groups, our Parks Department, our Public Works, our Water, our Sewer. We do it for the library. So this is a large member of our community, and I think that we recognize for that in the time frame in which is appropriate.
Question of process-wise, like you mentioned, the rest of those proclamations there, those aren't reviewed by the council. Are we changing the way we do those processes?
Those don't come in through the website, through external means. So that's the first time
Those are the reoccurring proclamations that we have year over year that we've been doing, and we just update them for that year. So it's something that we've always done as far as those other proclamations. We don't receive very many through the website, from what I can tell, because I'm not asked that often to look at these proclamations from the website. So I usually get emails directly to me if I would proclaim a certain thing or day or whatever. And, for BBL or for the food bank, those proclamations just come to me, and we write them up and we put it together and send it out. This one came through the website through the process. And so I just wanted to make sure that, I get it to the deputy mayor and just make sure that this is something that, when I do a proclamation, I want to represent all of us in the city. I don't want to, represent just half of us. So.
Yeah, but that makes sense. The council about that, Mr. Mayor, but I was just kind of wondering because, normally the council doesn't get asked. I
can definitely proclaim it. I have no problem. I have no problem the way it's written right now. I will do a proclamation next week. I have no problem.
I didn't know if it was going to be like just because it came in through the method is why it's.
Well, normally all the other ones are just, I don't know when the last time we've actually done proclamation. Previously done the year before, so.
Yeah, I didn't. I was trying to.
Yeah,
figure out
and so this one came through the website versus like a state recommended one, like the education.
And this was brought on because of Pierce County's passing of theirs. But I have no problem with the way it's been written today, the way it's been fixed. I have no problem with that proclamation next week. So, and if it's a resolution, that's a different story. I thought maybe you're going to do a resolution on this like you did on the last one. But if not, if it's just going to be a proclamation, the council doesn't have to worry about it. I can do the proclamation the way it's written today, and I feel okay about that because it's just defining that we are, inclusive as a city, and I think that's important for all of us, and so I can definitely do that. So council does not have to be on the hook for this or even say anything. I'm more happy to do the proclamation next week.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yeah.
Looking with Pablo, I did have a question about the June versus July, but just for the record, I may not understand everything and spoke with Pablo about this, but I would be in favor of this. I think it's important that we talk freedom and we talk about choice and we talk about the ability to love and care for others. I think this would be fantastic for our city.
Yeah.
I have a question. In reference to Deputy Mayor Evans referenced the resolution that we did a month and a half, 2 months ago. That was the resolution at that time was in response to restrictions and legal complications that were affecting our businesses and our cities in a very timely manner. Does making this proclamation address a law or a restriction that's negatively impacting businesses or individual freedoms of the LGBT community of Bonney?
It doesn't have to negatively impact us positively.
No, does this, are you, I'm trying to gather the reasoning behind it. You referenced the resolution.
Because we should be supportive of it.
Okay, in response to that then, at the same time, what I'd like to, being that I was only appointed in April, can someone share, I'd be curious what the history of Bonney Lake in making proclamations for selected groups of people.
Like I just said, we've done it for the public works, for parks, libraries, school boards.
Yes, I'm more speaking of along the national lines of lists of month-long observances from the U.S. From the federal level, in reference to Black History Month, Women's History Month, Autism Awareness Month, Jewish American Heritage Month, National Hispanic Heritage Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, Natural Indian American Alaskan Native Heritage Month. Those are all wonderful things to celebrate as well. And what is the history? And so are we going forward? Is the city going to start honoring those teams? I had a citizen ask me about, no one said anything about Juneteenth. So I'm trying to distinguish, as we are an inclusive city, but why one over another? And if it's that way, then we should acknowledge all of these things and proclamations going forward if that's our viewpoint as a city.
I completely agree. I think we should. Just because we haven't in the past doesn't mean we shouldn't in the future.
And something that comes up when like somebody wants to recognize National Ice Cream Month, or when I was going through the list of monthly observances, there are monthly observances that I personally would not want to celebrate, but they exist and they are federally referenced. And so I'm just saying, I think that there's some consideration and thought going forward on what we approve and not approve.
Well, I mean, if we're considering the community versus the LGBTQ, I think we should give our preference to the ones that live in our area.
I was trying to use discretion, and I didn't want to vocalize the ones that I thought probably wouldn't want to hear that do exist. And IC is not the best reference, but I would rather not publicly say some of the ones that are federally on the calendar that are not something that you would want to.
So I can probably help out here a little bit, Councilmember Ismail. So in the past, we do domestic violence proclamations. We do autism proclamations. We've done cancer proclamations. If they're sent to me, the thing is, I've looked at all the proclamations. We could have 3 proclamations each week if we wanted to, right? We can. They're out there. They're everywhere. So when they send it to me directly, I look at it and they say, yeah, let's get it out there. This is important to our region. But has Juneteenth ever come forward to me? No one said anything to me. I'm not going to create proclamations. If they submit them, then I review them accordingly. And so this one's been submitted. It's been written accordingly that I can accept. I will do a proclamation next week. But if they submit them, yeah, I'd look at all of them at all times, because I think a lot of them have a lot of merit. They always do. There's a reason they want the proclamation, and some are just for fun, and that's okay too. If we have the time to do it, then why not do it? Of course, when I'm absent from the meeting, I'll usually have the deputy mayor have to read them. So usually that's never they don't like that too much. I mean, in the past, but I think so we can the proclamation has been one of those things. It's really never been an official thing as far as how we go through the process. But I think I'm always wanting to make sure, and we've never done one for the Pride with LGBT. We've never done anything for that. So I want to make sure the council is, be aware of what we have and go from there. So, and maybe I got Deputy Mayor Evans off on the wrong foot, because I was thinking maybe this could be a resolution, but the way it's written now, it's a good proclamation, and I will move forward with it next week. And any other questions on that? All right. Any other open discussion? All right. Seeing none. Review of council minutes. We have Councilmember Carter and Councilmember Watson.
A few corrections they've been changed.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate that. All right. Item D, Sadie. Sadie said she's going to be the city clerk.
She said,
Mr. Mayor, this is item D, which is ordinance 994. Board of Housing for a period of 6 months in response to ESSHM 1220, providing for effective date, hearing, and declaration.
So moved.
Second, discussion, please. Any discussion? Councilmember McClymons?
Yeah, what happens if we don't pass this?
I do have a presentation.
I was going to say I sat with Ryan, Jason, and I had similar questions to Councilmember Simon, and they were extraordinarily helpful. And I wanted to thank you for taking that time with me and walking through Section 3 of the new legislation and how it affects the city going forward. So.
You want to
do a presentation? Okay.
That's only 582 kilobytes, so it's not.
we were in CDC with him.
I was quick. I was like 3.5 minutes.
I had a good hour, so I'm lucky.
I just wanted that mark.
Call for the question. I could not do that. Thank you, Sadie. So tonight we do have ordinance D21-94. It is for action under the emergency clause for permanent supportive housing and transitional housing. This is in response to some state legislation that was passed this year down in Olympia and signed into law by the governor. Part of the bill becomes effective on July 25th. And the provisions that we're talking about tonight are specifically related to the part of the bill that becomes effective on July 25th. Overall, the entire gross house bill is trying to address housing issues that the region is experiencing, also deal with the homelessness issue that the region is experiencing. Part of the state law amends the Growth Management Act to amend some goals and some requirements when we do our periodic update for our comprehensive plan. That's in the state law, but we won't be dealing with that part until we do our periodic update, which has to be done by June of 2024. So I just wanted to call everybody's attention to that. This is not the only thing coming out of this bill. There's about 3 different actions that we're going to have to take. The big one, as Councilman Ishmael mentioned, was Section 3, which amended the state law to preempt local authorities as it relates to shelters, emergency housing, permanent supportive housing, and traditional housing. The provisions that relate to permanent supportive housing and traditional housing take effect on July 25th, 2021. The provisions that deal with shelters and emergency housing take effect in September, and there's a second ordinance coming forward that you'll see at the beginning of September to address those issues. The bill also amended RCW 3678-390. For those in the planning world, this is our go-to every time there's a new change in state law. Cities usually pass a moratorium to allow us time to figure out what to do. They actually amended that state law to say you couldn't pass a moratorium to address these issues. It did not remove the provision to do interim zoning, which is what tonight is. Tonight is an ordinance to establish interim zoning while we develop the long-term zoning regulations, which may be similar to what we have tonight or may be different. The important thing to note is these changes apply statewide. They apply to all code cities and all charter cities. They were not required or mandated or associated with our housing action plan. They're 2 separate, distinct issues. We adopted a housing action plan. If the council would have never took the grant, never had the housing action plan, never passed the housing action plan, we would still be here tonight talking about this issue because this was a change to the state law outside of that issue. It just happens that they're on the heels of each other. So specifically, Section 3 is really the genesis of what we've got going on tonight. So I kind of put this together, and since the council gets copies of the PowerPoint later, I wanted to walk everybody through kind of just quickly how this gets interpreted. So what Section 3 of the RCW requires is that a city cannot prohibit transitional housing, which is housing for people coming right out of homelessness. They're allowed to live there for up to 2 years, and as they move to more permanent housing. So we cannot prohibit that in any zone, or permanent supportive housing. And the RCW for permanent supportive housing is subsidized or leased housing that has no length of stay for people who are experiencing homelessness or are imminently going to be homeless, who have conditions related to rental history, criminal history, or personal behavior issues, and would not qualify for otherwise subsidized housing. So this is kind of the next level of housing. So you have subsidized housing, which is the view by vintage, which they have minimum qualifications to get into, rental history, income. This is for people who don't even qualify for those types of housing. So what the state law passed said, in any zone in which you allow for a residential unit, you have to allow for these two housing types. And that would be our RC5, R1, R2, R3, C1, C2, DM, and DC. All of those zones allow for residential units. So by this state law, we cannot prohibit these housing types in those zoning classifications. The next paragraph deals with the emergency shelters and emergency indoor housing. That will be dealing with a separate ordinance that you'll be seeing in probably about a month. The state law did say that you could provide reasonable occupancy space, intensity, use requirements may be imposed. And I would say that's actually the most critical part. As I spoke with Councilmember Ishmael on the phone, when I worked for the city of Des Moines, we had a number of these types of facilities kind of in this range. The biggest problems that we were running into with them is overcrowding, where they would take a small bedroom and put 2 bunk beds in and put 4 people in the room, or to take a garage and stack it with bunk beds and have bedrooms, or convert storage areas into bedrooms. Those were the biggest challenges we face that we were facing, is just the overcrowding and the unsafe condition for people who are in otherwise a very tough situation and are trying to kind of, as we were hearing earlier, attain their dignity once again, being taken advantage. And there are people who do things for good, and there's people who do things for bad. And so this having to be able to have reasonable occupancy, spacing, and intensity requirements allows us to set standards to make sure that the residents of those facilities are safe and not be a burden on them. One of the things that they did add to the law is that the standards can't be so restrictive as to prevent the siting of these types of housing facilities. We may have to tweak the ordinance later, because one part of this, and I'm sorry it's not on the screen, is that in Section 1 of the state law, we're going to get a target from the Department of Commerce of how many transitional and permanent supportive housing units we should have in the city. And we're going to have to make sure our zoning code supports that. We don't have to create them, we don't have to build them, we just have to make sure our zoning code does not prevent that number. We will not know what that number is for a while. So the standards right now are our best guess. And once we get that target, we may have to reevaluate the spacing requirement, but we won't know that for a few more months. So we're waiting on the Department of Commerce.
Best guess on that.
We don't even have a bet. I mean, Commerce doesn't even know. It was if you go through and that's why I didn't put the whole law up here. If you read Section 1, which is in Section 2, which is most of it, there's a lot of stuff they added. And one of the things that they require in Section 2 of the state law is for Commerce to establish targets for low-income housing, moderate-income housing, all these different housing types for every code city. I don't even know if Commerce really knows how they're going to do that yet. So I'm not hazarding a guess. I just pointed out that if we set spacing requirements in here as part of this ordinance and we keep them as part of the permanent ordinance, when that number comes in 22 or 23, we may have to tweak. I don't know. And it's going to be different because Seattle's going to have to take more than Bonney Lake, and Tacoma's going to take more than Bonney Lake. So it's going to be interesting to see how that gets brought forward by Commerce over time.
They're like
Yeah, we have to make them a permitted use. So what we've done in the land use matrix for the interim regulations is we already had group homes in there because there was a federal fair housing standard that said you couldn't in any zone there, you basically allow for single family homes. You couldn't prohibit people from doing like clean and sober housing. We already had this kind of group homes line in there for that federal standard. What we've done is just basically on the group homes line, put Ps for the rest of the zones that allow for residential units, added a footnote that references those two definitions that I provided for in the state law, and then another footnote that references this new proposed section to 1808, which would establish some of the safety standards. So it basically says you can't have more dwelling units on the property than would otherwise be allowed by the zoning code. So if it's an R1, you can't have more than 2 dwelling units. You can't have more than 4 units per net acre. That's units, not people renting different rooms in a building. So it'd be separate buildings. The maximum occupancy load can be no more than one person for every 200 square feet of the building. That comes right out of the International Building Code. The bedrooms, you have to have 70 square feet per person. This is a little bit of an interpretation out of the International Building Code. The International Building Code says that the minimum square footage for a bedroom has to be 70 square feet. So what we're doing is we're kind of taking that standard and saying that it's per person. So if you have a room that's 140 square feet, you can house 2 people in it. If you have a room that's 130, it's 1. As I said, the problem that we saw when I worked in another community was more of a cramming of people and a capacity issue, and that's really meant to address this. The other one is we have a specific requirement that all units meet the criteria for a bedroom. We've had people try to shoehorn things into garages and other different spaces, so making sure that we have bedrooms. We did put a half-mile kind of circle on these and say you can't be more than a half mile. That's the standard that may change based on that target that may come. But for right now, it's going to stay a half mile. That may change in the permanent ordinance, but it also may change when the transition comes out with the targets. We also required that if you are operating one of these facilities, you're also working with you're utilizing the Pierce County Homeless Information Management System. This is so that all the nonprofits and organizations who are dealing with homelessness issues can talk to each other and make sure to know who's got services for what and where individuals are. It's the same thing that they use the end time counts for some of the encampments. They use this as a way of trying to understanding where the homeless individuals are. And these are people that are moving out of homelessness, so they may be falling back and forth, especially in that transition. What we did require is that you, prior to beginning operation, you do have to have a safety inspection by the city of Bonney Lake. So if you want to open a facility, we have to come in and make sure you have your smoke detectors, make sure you're meeting the standards in the code, that you are using truly bedrooms as bedrooms, not non-bedrooms as non-bedrooms, and that inspection is renewed every year. And that's really meant to make sure that the people who are there, some of the most vulnerable in the community, are not also being taken advantage. As I said, there are nonprofits like we heard tonight that are doing amazing work and doing great things for the communities, but I've also had experience where there are less than admirable nonprofits not doing as good work. And so this is just a way to make sure that those individuals who are trying to obtain their dignity back, who are trying to re-enter the society, are not being taken advantage of at that most initial step. So that's what that is there for. It's not to get into their business, but it's to make sure that the building is actually safe, not being damaged. Smoke detectors are there. People are using the bedrooms. They're not converting the garage into a bedroom the minute we walk away. Which it does happen. I've seen it happen. So I can answer any questions. I don't know exactly next steps, but it is slated as an emergency ordinance. So to pass tonight, it would be it needs to be a majority plus one. The reason it's an emergency is because we need the ordinance to take effect before July 25th, so that we have the standards in place before the state law becomes.
Hey, Jason, I have a question. So I've been hearing rumors from other cities that they're really concerned about this because it's going to eliminate, R1, individual family housing lots, and so, I mean, what is this thing going to do as far as, I like my house, I like my R1 lot, but these folks are really concerned about it's actually going to take us away from that and be like Seattle and be completely multifamily throughout the city.
Well, it doesn't, that's why the first standard is it doesn't change the density requirements. You couldn't buy a property that's zoned R1 that's an acre and put 12 units on it. You're still limited to the 4 to 6 units, 4 to 5 units per net acre. So you wouldn't change the underlying density requirement. You would still have to be a single family home because that is my understanding with the underlying housing type. This would be the use of that facility. But you may have more than 4 people renting a house, or 5 people or 6 people living in. It would still be typically what these are houses, and they providing the rooms, and then the individuals use the kitchen and living room as a common area. A lot similar to the clean and sober housing, which is already allowed.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. So thank you. That's really, really awesome. I'm like thoroughly confused, right? So you may need to talk louder or slower so I understand. So we saw an amazing presentation about the selfless giving of our community and activists in our community. And I got a feeling that we were celebrating the idea we were removing rules, right? We're not going to make people sign up, those sorts of things. More grace, right? Yet, when our legislature decides to provide very specific rules, well, maybe do we have a different ruler by which we're going to measure that behavior? I get confused because either rules are good or they're bad, right? Rules should be for everybody. And so I'm trying to understand the role of government here with this. I get it. We should not discriminate against people, especially people that are in crisis, right? Especially people in crisis don't make good decisions. So I don't want to come across that way, but it's just like I look at this, and you said we're going to get more specificity from a department and from people in that department that you don't even know how they're going to define that specificity, and we're going to be liable to meeting it, right? That doesn't scare you out of an out-of-control government. I don't know what does, right? Because that's crazy. I celebrate a lot of the things that we were talking about tonight, but this is beyond the brink of insanity in the sense that we're going to say, okay, the state legislature is going to tell us we're responsible for this, and then there's going to be some more rules coming down that are going to tell us exactly how many we have to hit.
Not how many we have to hit, but how many we have to plan for. As I said, we're not going to be ever required to. Well, I shouldn't say ever. There's nothing in the state law. I should always refrain myself from saying nothing. There's nothing in the current state law that says we have to do anything other than make sure our zoning code does not preclude the siting of these types of facilities. So, for example, and I was having this conversation with someone earlier today, if it is you need 20 and you have half-mile circles and you can show that you could fit 20 half-mile circles in the city, you're more likely going to be fine. If you have to have 500, half-mile circle probably not going to work. But we won't know those numbers until later. And I will tell you, Seattle is going to be significantly higher than Bonney Lake. I don't know what those numbers look like, and that's what we are constantly doing as staff is working with those agencies to understand this. The thing to take away tonight is there's really kind of 2 options. Option 1, council doesn't pass the interim zoning regulations. People can build transitional homes and permanent supportive housing anywhere in the city. The city would have no standards related to occupancy, spacing, or distance. So if they have them 12 in a row, nothing we could say. If they're kind of right on the line of the building code, nothing we could say, and there would be no permits or safety inspections because just to rent rooms doesn't require any permitting through the city. So that's option 1 is we don't do anything and there is no standards, but not voting for the ordinance doesn't prevent people from being able to open these facilities anywhere in the city. The state law has preempted the field for us, saying that you cannot prohibit these in any zone that allows for residential units. So we can't say no to anybody that would want to come in. What the interim zoning regulation does is to establish a framework for safety. We know these facilities may be coming. They may be being developed in the city. How can we do it in a safe and responsible way to make sure that the residents of the building are safe? And that's where the occupancy and spacing requirements come into play. These are interim zoning regulations that are going to be in place for 6 months while we figure out what the final package look like. As I explained to Councilman Ishmael, it may be identical to this unless there's some other additional research that comes out that says you should add this. But remember, we have that limitation on intensity, spacing, and occupancy, right? So we have to work within those frameworks. So it may change, it may not, but this allows us to at least have a protection. I will say in my time being here, we have not had anybody approach us wanting to operate a facility like this. Our housing prices are high, so it's very expensive to purchase homes to make these types of changes. But you still want to make sure you have at least a baseline standard so that if something were to happen, you have a measure of protection. Voting against the interim regulations doesn't provide safety, doesn't stop the facility, doesn't mean that we can prevent them. It just means that there is.
So actually, thank you for you gave me the answer. I'm like, why am I already have a state legislature that's creating what I consider to be excessive regulation and then delegating that to the Bureau of Commerce. And then I'm going to create more regulation inside my city. I'm like, why do I want to create more regulation? What if I don't do anything? Isn't the state aren't they already over-regulating us? But I heard you say, just to make sure I understand, because you were nice and slow and loud. I appreciate that. So if I got it right, what you said was, we want to pass this because this is the best way we can protect the character of our area and still provide protection for people so that we're not arbitrarily saying you can't create this facility here, right?
It sets the standards to prevent bad actors from doing
that was the answer I was looking
bad
for.
things in the community. A good nonprofit, as we've seen, does great things, does great work. I don't think they would have a problem with this. There'll always be debates about language and whether it goes too far or doesn't go too far. I mean, I think you'll always have that. But the bottom line intent of this is to say this is something that we have to allow in the city. How do we do it in a responsible way to make sure that not only the community is protected and the community feels comfortable, but also that the residents of the facilities feel comfortable. I think that's the target of these regulations, is not really to regulate the community more than to make sure that when people are living in these types of facilities, they're doing it in a safe way.
And our community doesn't have a record of this sort of problem currently.
It does not. But like I said, when these popped up in my other community, we were scrambling to figure out how to deal with them without the regulations on the books.
Thank you. Sorry.
So, Jason, so I understand right now we don't have probably any of the other housing?
I do believe we have some clean and sober housing. I know that there's at least one facility on the east side of the city. There may be others because we don't regulate clean and sober housing because of the way the federal law acts is people can come to live together.
Sure. I didn't know under a permitted type activity.
No, we wouldn't. There would be no permitting requirement for a clean and sober housing because it's just people living in a house, supporting each other as they go through the kind of that process of becoming clean and sober. These are a little heightened, as I said, because you're dealing with people that are they're coming. Transitional housing is you're coming right out of homelessness, and this may be the first time you're living in a house for a year. And in talking to people who've worked in that industry, to us it sounds strange, but to people who've been on the street for 10 years, living in a house sounds strange. And there's things that they have to learn that we all take for granted. And so with the right support network, the right nonprofits, those things can be done well. But the wrong nonprofits, those can be done really bad. And these standards are just meant to say the structure needs to be safe. and this is how we're going to verify that the structure is safe, and support the community.
I know that we have one really amazing cleaning sober program here in Bonney Lake called Absolute Ministries, men's house and women's house, and has a very successful transition period for 2 years, and then they rotate out and they're up to somewhere in the 80s where they don't have, they go back to their old ways, 80%. So this in particular for permanent supportive housing or transitional housing. So just to be clear, they would have to apply for a permit with the city, so we would know that they exist.
They would apply for a safety inspection. We're trying to not require a permit to say we're permitting it, but more of a safety inspection for us to come out, send our building inspector, one of our building inspectors out to the field to make sure things like smoke detectors are there, make sure bedrooms are being used as bedrooms, that there's plumbing in the facilities, that it's a safe place to have people housed. But that's the only thing that we would be doing. The ordinance would require that every year you get another safety inspection to make sure that the smoke alarms are still there, that you're not making changes, so it stays safe over time. But yes, that would be what we're doing a little different than the clean and sober housing. And the fact that we don't know about them is actually a testament to how well it can be done, right? Like we're not hearing about them. I can't tell you about them because I'm not getting complaints from citizens. We're not having building code issues. We're not having building violations. So that's really a testament to how well those operations are operating, that I don't know that they're there, because that's the way it's designed to work. If it's done well, the individuals living in the community have no idea. That's kind of the ultimate goal, is that you just don't know they're there.
Right. But they have to have a 501c3 status to apply for that.
I've been researching that, and I'm not 100% sure. I kind of was going back to my notes when we spoke, and I want to say, I think I misspoke. The section that we stole the definition from transitional housing deals with, talks about nonprofits, but we just took the definitions of transitional housing. So there's nothing in the state law or any of the definitions that requires it to be a nonprofit. I would hard pressed to see an individual doing this unless they really just are doing it out of the generousness of their heart. But the same standards would apply to both, whether it's an individual, a private firm, or I misspoke on the phone. I wanted to bring that up in the minutes for that.
I was like what you just said. If you've been to both, ones that are run well, when you didn't even know were there, and it's great. I've been to some where they started off well. A year or two down the road, it's a different show. So it is good to go back and check those things every now and then and just check in so that everybody's safe. And obviously, I think we have to do something about regulation. I think overstepping our territory, but well, we have to do this.
And we do charge a fee for the safety inspection, so that the cost of sending the inspector out to do everything is not borne by the city.
So in essence, this ordinance is protecting the city from the state and reining in as what we can control, in reference to what Mayor Johnson was saying about people being concerned about R1 and R1 zoning, and like we're losing that local control. This ordinance actually increases the local control that we can have.
Yeah, it takes as much of the field back, I think, as you can. I mean, as I said, I think you can get 5 planners and 4 lawyers in the room, and we'll spend 12 hours discussing this, and I think you'll have 12 different. But in my opinion, I think it strikes a common ground to recognize the need for these types of facilities, while at the same time recognizing that we are dealing with people that do have challenges, and making sure that where they live is safe.
Terrific. Any other questions of Jason? All right. I don't see any. Thank you, Jason, very much. Ready to vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Nice job this evening. Good to see everybody in the chambers. And Ryan, our new assistant chief, Good to see him hanging out. That's good. Staying out of trouble. Love it. Next to Ryan. Anyway, thanks again, everyone. And Stacy, thank you again for your updates. You guys are doing great work. Really love it. All right. Well, we'll return until next week. Everyone be safe. Thank you.